The first time Emily told me she'd be working late, I didn't think much of it. After all, we both had demanding jobs, hers as a marketing manager and mine in finance. I'd be the first to admit that our careers had always taken center stage in our marriage, pushing date nights and shared laughter into the background. But then it happened a third time, then a fourth. And in as many weeks, something began gnawing at me. Emily had started dressing up more for work, her makeup just a touch more dramatic, her perfume lingering longer than it used to. It was subtle, but once I noticed it, I couldn't unsee it. I convinced myself it was nothing, that I was being paranoid. I trusted Emily. We had been married for 10 years, built a life together, talked about children, and even adopted a dog. Yet, doubt was insidious, creeping into my mind during quiet moments. One evening, as we sat over a silent dinner, I decided to bring it up. "Work been keeping you busy lately?" I asked, keeping my tone casual. She looked up from her plate, her eyes guarded.
Yeah.
"Big campaign coming up, lots of late nights." Her response was measured, practiced even, and it twisted something in my gut. But I nodded, letting it drop. I didn't want to seem accusatory. That night, as she showered, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. I glanced over. A message from Stacy, one of Emily's closest friends who lived halfway across the country. The preview read, "Tonight was amazing. Can't wait to see you again." My heart thudded painfully against my ribcage, a pit opening in my stomach as the ugly reality took shape. I could have confronted her right then and there, but something held me back. Instead, I decided to confirm my suspicions first. Over the next week, I called her office under the guise of asking her out for lunch. Each time, her secretary informed me that Emily had left for meetings. Once or twice, I even drove by her office building, only to find her car missing. The breaking point came on a Thursday evening. She told me she'd be working late again, her voice laced with faint exhaustion. I waited an hour before grabbing my keys and driving to her office. Her car wasn't in the lot. But I wasn't surprised anymore. Determined, I logged into our shared phone account. Her call logs and messages, normally mundane, revealed a number she had been in frequent contact with. A number not associated with any of her known friends or colleagues. I dialed it from a burner phone, my hands shaking. A man's voice answered, casual and oblivious. "Hey, babe. Missing me already?" I didn't respond, letting the silence weigh down on him before hanging up. My chest felt heavy, a mixture of anger and heartbreak. That night, I relived every moment of our marriage, dissecting every lie she had told me. The next morning, I devised my plan. I hired a private investigator who quickly confirmed my worst fears. Emily wasn't just cheating, she was living a double life. Weekend work trips were romantic getaways. Late meetings were dinners and rendezvous at his apartment. It was time for revenge. But not the kind that would land me in jail or ruin my own life. I wanted justice, the kind that left her with nothing but the consequences of her choices. I gathered evidence, photos, texts, recorded calls. I made sure it was all admissible in court, preparing for the inevitable divorce. But before I pulled the trigger, I wanted to confront her lover. His name was David, a colleague of hers. Single, smug, and oblivious to the storm headed his way. I showed up at his apartment one evening, knowing Emily was inside. The door opened, and there he stood. The shock on his face was almost comical. "Can I help you?" he stammered, already paling. "Yeah, you can," I replied coldly, pushing my way inside. Emily stood frozen in the living room, her face white as a sheet. "You told me you were working late," I said to her, each word a weapon. "And here you are, throwing away everything we built." David tried to interject, but I turned on him, my voice sharper than ever. "Did you know she was married? Or did she lie to you too?" He swallowed, his eyes darting between us. I didn't know." I stepped closer until we were eye to eye. "You knew. You just didn't care." Emily finally found her voice, but it was weak, trembling. "We can talk about this at home. Please." "There's nothing to talk about." I cut her off. "You made your choice. I tossed the envelope of evidence onto their coffee table, watching it spill out. Photos of them together, screenshots of their texts. Emily reached for it, her hands shaking. "What are you going to do?" she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I've already filed for divorce," I replied, my voice steady. "And you can keep your lover, but you'll lose everything else." I turned to David, whose face had turned a sickly shade of green. "Good luck explaining this to HR," I added. "I'm pretty sure they have a strict no-fraternization policy." With that, I walked out, leaving them in stunned silence. The divorce was swift. I got the house, the car, and even full custody of our dog, one of the few innocents in this mess. David lost his job after HR was anonymously tipped off. Emily was left scrambling to find a new apartment, her reputation in ruins. The first weekend after the divorce was finalized, I took a trip, somewhere warm, somewhere far from the wreckage she left behind. I ordered a drink at the beach bar, the sun warm on my face, and realized something. I felt lighter than I had in years. I was free, unburdened by deceit. Emily had shattered our life together, but in doing so, she had given me the freedom to rebuild mine, stronger and wiser than before. And as for Emily and David, last I heard, their affair fizzled under the pressure of the real world. She moved back in with her parents. He relocated out of state, both haunted by the destruction they'd caused. Their world had crashed down around them, and I had emerged from the rubble, unscathed and resolute. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't about causing pain. It's about moving forward, thriving despite the betrayal. And that's exactly what I did.